Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Brian. We're going to do an episode of sounds from my inbox exploring a few different tracks from smaller bands who have gotten in contact with me and asked me to check out their music. Two of these bands, Elyne and Prospective, I've had on the channel before through the old creator request program, which is pretty much the same deal, I just renamed it. And then we have two new ones, Symphress and Serenity. So, we're going to dive into these. We'll listen to them. I'll give my thoughts, move on to the next, and keep the process going until we've hit about an hour long. Which seems to be about 4 tracks. 4 songs, 4 bands, whatever. So we're going to kick this off with Elyne. I Don't Feel Anything. See what they're bringing to the table today. They're coming in real hard right from the start, it seems. I'm really digging the backbeat cymbal there. Oh, kind of funky, and then the synth comes in. Yep. It's a really interesting texture on the guitar that leans more towards a synth than a rock or metal guitar. I think it's really interesting too that the vocals leading into our chorus, for whatever reason, make me think of halftime, and we don't get into the halftime. They keep that same intensity. Interesting. This is what I would expect from the chorus, a halftime feel. Nice production on the vocals there to distort it. You know, after being conditioned through 2 of those at least, right? Oh no, it comes off the start as well. We've heard that I Don't Feel Anything layered, digitized harsh 3 times that lead into the post-chorus riff. And to hear it right there with nothing after it is very jarring. You guys have conditioned me to expect the syncopated guitar stuff to come in. And it didn't. Yeah, I kind of hate that feeling, but I'm going to place that on me, not on y'all. I think the ending was fine. So let's get into what's going on here. We have some metalcore here. We have heavy texture-based rhythmic guitaring and drumming that we have in our verse that leads into a chorus with clean vocals, a solid melody line, catchy over a chord progression underneath. We go back and forth between these two. We have a build up and a breakdown, a build up into a breakdown for our bridge. We come back with a variation on our chorus. The halftime feel, the fuzzy, muddied vocals. That brings us back into a proper chorus for our third time through to end the track on. They do the metalcore formula very well. This is iterative music, but there are, well, one, it's done at such a high level. I think they definitely deserve any of their, their fans, their praise, anything like that. They should be a bigger band, I think. And I'm kind of curious. They only have 10,000 subscribers on YouTube, but I'm going to take a second right here, because I was looking up a little bit about them, and they played at Knotfest, I think, which is no small feat. Well, they only have 30,000 monthly listens on Spotify, which isn't big, but it's more than I was thinking. So I'm kind of glad they are getting a little bit of attention here. Even, well, I suppose that could be one person just listening a lot, but they do what they do very well. But I think what's more interesting about them is where they deviate from the typical metalcore formula. Either a heavy verse into a light chorus or a light verse into a heavy chorus. And it's their timbres, it's the production. The guitar tone, as I mentioned, the first time we heard the verse, I actually said it was a synth. I didn't mention it, but I was imagining a backing track, but I think it was our post-chorus. When I realized the guitar is probably the synth tone, it is not a timbre I would expect to come out of that, and I think it's really interesting to see people stepping outside of the realm of the quintessential metal guitar tone. And I think it absolutely works for them, especially with how digital sounds are being brought into this track all over the place. It helps differentiate them from their contemporaries while also working well within their general sound. It still has that fuzzy edginess you would want a guitar to sound like. It just features tones and focuses more on a very sharp high end that typically guitars don't. And there's probably a bunch of other stuff I don't even understand that are in their chain that help, support their specific sound as well. Pedals and modifications to sound are they're a whole other world, crafting your guitar tone. I have no expertise there, but I always think it's fascinating to look at somebody's pedal board and just be like, there's millions of pedals out there and you chose these 13 with these specific settings for this specific sound. How? Why? How much trial and error goes into this? But they do. They have a unique guitar tone that I think absolutely works for them, and I really dig that. The drumming in here is solid. It keeps the pressure going forward throughout most of it, but there are some really nice ornamental ideas and fills throughout that I think work very well for them. I was mentioning that the guitar tone itself works well with some of their other electronic ideas, and I want to focus specifically on the breakdown, which, if you just listen to the typical guitar tone out of it, is going to be rather standard, but it was those screechy, techno-y stingers, I guess we would call them. Just a single note, it hits and it backs off real quick. They were dissonant. They were tonally jumping all over the place. We hit a pitch up here, then come down here, and like it's not bouncing around with the rest of the music at all. It was just a very glitchy sound that I think paired well, since we were already introduced to this type of timbre from our guitar earlier in the track. And we heard a little bit of this as well, I think, in our second verse with some of these digital sounds coming in. And I think it's interesting. It keeps the song from feeling too familiar while working within a sound that overall is very familiar. I think it's a great way to make music in a crowded genre and stand out within it. And like I said, I do hope that they get heard and seen, because I do think they're doing something a little special within the realm of metalcore, and I think it'd be a shame if they were never quite discovered by fans. I mean, yeah, I mean, discovered by a record label's nice too. Hopefully that brings in the financials to continue on with their stuff, but to find their fans, I think that's ultimately what I want for them. I'm going to take a second to check out some lyrics, and we'll keep this train rolling. Alright, one thing I completely forgot to talk about that I was immediately reminded of looking at the lyrics is the vocal layering and production. Not all of it. I think that the clean vocals are well produced, well layered. The harshes have power behind them, but specifically the one where he screams, "I don't feel anything" at the end of each chorus, and what we kicked our track off with, there is a lot of natural compression coming on in here. It is a pretty powerful harsh as it stands, but they put even more distortion and fuzz on top of it. It comes through, at least to me, as if an AI or some sort of robot with the digitized voice box and, working with speakers or whatever, were attempting to do a harsh vocal. And I think it's a very cool effect that once again leans into a lot of the electronic elements that are going on in this song overall. Just a really neat way to create this unified sound, once again, to separate them from their contemporaries. Electronic sounds in music are, I mean, in metalcore at least, are becoming more and more common, but I don't think they're used like this yet. And I think this band might actually be on the cusp of a sound that we'll hear more and more of moving forward. Now, on the topic of the lyrics, uh, it's about somebody tearing you down and you becoming numb, just you just shutting down from it, but wanting the best for them, or wanting whatever you have to still be something that exists. Our opening stanza says, "I'm getting weaker, the sky is falling down, I feel I'm helpless, I don't want to see you die." The pre-chorus says, "For every moment of truth in this fictional life, my love is pure, but you," we go into the chorus, "you kill me every day, I can hear you say every little thing to tame my fear." It's we have ideas of living in hell, thousand shards of glass in my head, I'm choking to death, is this a lonely world? People see me smile while inside I burn. I feel weak and miserable. I just need a break. We bleed inside, we're already dead, we eat sweet pills and swallow to forget. This idea that life just isn't great right now. And so we allow ourselves to become numb to it. At least that's what everything but the chorus tells me. I'm still not entirely sure who the you is. I don't want to see you die, but you kill me every day. There's so many stanzas in here that are specifically about the negativity of our lives. Or even more specifically, the negativity of my life. I'm choking to death. I feel weak. I'm miserable. I need a break. Um, I burn inside. I'm really curious who the you is. Is this supposed to be a personification of society at large? Do we want to see society succeed, but we're also isolated in it? I'm not entirely sure what the song is saying on that front, but the other 70% of it is very clear. My life isn't great, and I numb myself to keep going. And that's not how it should be. I'm out here drowning, and I just need some help. That's what the song is about. Um, Pairing it against the music, is metalcore. I don't usually expect there to be a strong synergy between theme and sound. And here I wouldn't say there is one, but like I said, I don't really expect it either, so I'm not too disappointed in that. Alright, moving forward, we have the band Prospective. We're going to be checking out the track Hiding the Truth today. This is another one we've had on the channel before. I see the hashtag on this one is also metalcore, so I'm going to get a little bit more of the same or something similar to what we just heard. Let's dive into Prospective and see what they're bringing to the table today. Coming right in with some screams and heaviness. Electronica synth sitting outside of syncopated rhythmic textural guitar work, driving drums.
I can taste it, depression is coming. It's not the first time, it won't be the last. All my senses are drowned in this ocean, no emotions. There were times in the past I believed you.
Digging the layered harsh and clean there. Half-timing it to wrap this chorus up. Heavy dissonance utilized underneath these lyrics. Real fun production there, both with the low, clean voice and the bouncing harsh. Got that drone sit in the background underneath the breakdown. Nice flow change with the triplets.
And once more I'm betrayed, how much can I take? We're just playing it back to
Yeah, it's interesting to have two metalcore tracks back to back like this. It's not often we get to look at it this way, and I don't necessarily mean to contrast them. It's just I don't get this opportunity often. I think it's interesting to see how these two bands deviated and went their own way. I mean, they both certainly have, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Perspective song here. The verse has syncopated, texture-based guitar work, working alongside the bass kick and the bass guitar to create syncopated groove and heaviness and weight in the verse that leads to chords in the chorus with a clean vocal on top of it. They utilized synthesizers outside of this to create extra width and to include a melody line alongside the rhythmic element of the guitars in our verse, and created just atmospheric stuff in the chorus. And that is the same description I used to talk about what Elyne was doing. Perspective takes this in a very different direction, though, and I hear a lot of stuff. Metalcore is the same thing. Every band's doing the same thing. Yeah, I mean, to an extent, there is a formula at the bottom of this, and I just showcased that. But to say that every band's doing the same thing in metalcore, I think, is a gross misunderstanding of the differentiations between a lot of these bands. Perspective is doing something very cool here with harmonization and layering. Many of these sections have dual vocals to them. We have two harshes. We have one of the harshes also does it clean. At least I can tell from timbre. There might actually be a third vocalist. Actually. What this allows them to do is, since their guitars don't typically take up the mantle of melody, they can still have multiple melodic lines going on at one time. And in the case where we have a harsh and a clean, we also occasionally have the synthesizers adding another layer of melody to the harsh, creating sometimes more texture, sometimes more harmony, and sometimes counterpoint. There really isn't too much of a rhyme or reason as to what gets layered up, what gets traded off, when do the vocals change, when do they line up, and it creates this sort of anticipation throughout a lot of the song of when are we going to get the extra depth. And it's really difficult to gauge based on a first listen when they're going to choose to go in that direction. I found that sort of curiosity, the unexpectedness of it, quite enticing to listen to. They also chose to eschew the standard structure of the track. Instead of going for the A-B-A-B-C-B pattern, like a lot of bands utilize, they went for something that felt a bit more linear and at the end finally looped back. It might have been an A-B-A-C-D-B thing going on, if my count is correct there. Regardless, we sort of returned to a type of verse. It wasn't the same exact first verse we had after the chorus, before the chorus, but doing it after. It might have been a variation on it, it might have been a brand new section altogether. And from there, we began to have a descent into heavier and heavier ideas until we hit a full on breakdown that takes us back to the chorus. And I like how this idea itself tells a story. We have the illusion of the cycle that eventually leads to a spiral. The cycle gets turned on its side and descends as we explore heavier and more disjointed and noisier and more dissonant ideas before cycling back to the chorus. I'm curious to get into the lyrics here and see exactly what the chorus is, to see why narratively we might have returned to it. It could very easily just be a decision to go back there because that's what songs do. They end on choruses, right? But there also could be a reason about cyclicality, about why we would return to that idea that far into the track after such a descent. I think that about wraps up what I want to say about this track. I'm going to take a second to hit some lyrics uh, before moving on. Lyrically, we have a track about a toxic relationship. We have a very one-sided thing going on between our narrator and the other person, where our narrator feels used and abused. One line specifically saying, "I've got your back, and baby, you've never got mine." At the beginning of the track, though, we can see that this relationship is either ended or he has reached the point of realizing all of this. And he says, "I can taste it. Depression is coming. It's not the first time. It won't be the last. All my senses are drowned in this ocean. no emotions. I should have known that you would have betrayed every piece of my soul. And that's the general gist of this, is that he finds himself spiraling in situations like this in the past, but nobody helps him. He deals with it the only way that he knows how, which it seems to be shutting down, numbing the pain. Interesting to see those parallels. Again, I'm not trying to compare and contrast these two tracks. I think it's pure coincidence at this point that there's as many parallels as there are. After our first chorus, though, we do have this descent. No one can help me. No one can save me. I'm the only thing that I have right now, but this is the last time. I'm not going to back down and run back to you anymore. You've always hid the truth from me. But he is scared. He says, "How much can I take? Will this pain lead me back to you?" And there's that fear that it has been a cycle, right? This has happened again, as he says. It's not the first time, and it won't be the last. He even acknowledges it right off the bat. And I think that's where the cycle comes back in. The spiral is, this is the last time, it's never going to happen, really reaching this dark place of dealing with the negativity of this relationship, and making these statements. It's never going to happen. I've known it. I've seen you do it. You never have my back. I'm not crawling back to you this time. And then the lead into the final chorus. Will this pain lead me back to you? And the chorus says, you're leaving me black and blue. You were hiding the truth. But do I ever cross your heart? Do you ever think about me? Almost in a way, especially since that line gets repeated in the clean, sparse ending. He says, was it all just in my mind? Do I ever cross your heart? Almost as if he knows, there's a chance that I'll go back to you because I still think about things this way. That's where the cyclicality comes in. Yeah, so I actually dig that. I wouldn't say that there's a lot of emotional crossover between the vocals, the lyrics, and the music, but there is certainly this story, this narrative, the cycle, the down spiral, and the repetition of the cycle that can be found in both the story of the lyrics and the music. All right, moving on, we're going to look at the band Sad Serenity with the track Dukkha, Dukkha. This track came out 4 months ago. Let's dive into it and see what's going on. Okay. Very fun, proggy start. Getting some heavy groove there. Some really funky snare accents coming through here too. What a strange melody. I think we were working with 3 bars of 4 there. Oh no, with the way it comes in. Well, no, the drums are in 4, but that means that the guitars would have been in 3.
keeps on slipping, lurking at his side. A game of hide and seek, suffering. His skin and offspring fuel the downswing, ties around his chest. What once was born of love, a source of inner joy, transforms slowly, breathing a pungent yet enchanting reek of decay.
Ooh, getting the belt underneath that.
Time is a healer, or so they say. If pain is subtle, I try to invade. We shine through the ashes of our past. Why do the good things fail to last?
Oh man.
Mystified, distance and wantings, do's and don'ts, confusing life and death. A compass needle spinning round and round and round endlessly. The source of misery, of woe to end and start again. The love inevitability. What once was born of love, a source of inner joy, transforms slowly. Breathe out the pungent yet enchanting reek of decay. Yeah. Time is a healer, or so they say. If pain is subtle, I try to invade. We wade through the rivers of neglect. The noose around our necks choke.
I like the playfulness of the bouncing around between the sounds. There's a lot of bold ideas in here. really like allowing a lot of the external elements of singing to be present there. What I mean about that last comment about the external elements of singing is that when you sing or speak, it's not just the vocal cord vibrations and the enunciations you make with your tongue and your throat and your lips and all that stuff that that you pick up and record. There's breaths, there's mouth sounds, there's all sorts of stuff that goes, and a lot of that is added in here. And I feel that's a very cool aspect about this, because at least when it comes to prog metal, which is what this feels like to me, first and foremost, Circus Maximus is Circus Maximus? No, Circus Maximus comes to mind based on a lot of their harmonic ideas, but also Dream Theater. Um, and I'd even say that there's some Yes in here at places, which I know isn't prog metal, but when it comes to a lot of these prog metal bands, I feel like perfection is their goal, which absolutely works for some of the stuff that they go for. And so the production helps shave off any rough edges. And I think it's really neat to hear that type of perfection first production in the guitar and drumming and the bass work. But when it comes to the vocals, we're allowed to hear the breaths. We're allowed to hear all the stuff outside of the singing itself. It's a little detail that I don't think most people are going to pick up on, but that I just don't hear too often in the bands that it seems that this one is emulating, or at least inspired by. I also mentioned that this band has a lot of big ideas, and I stand behind that. I don't know how old they are. That is to say, I don't know if this is their first album that they've put together, or their third, or their seventh. Um, there's a lot of bold ideas on here, though, and this is why I think they might be a bit younger of a band, not necessarily in their ages, but as putting music together. The thing that separates a band like this versus one of the greats versus your Dream Theaters, right, is execution. And I'm not going to say that any of the ideas in here are bad. And when I talk about ideas, I mean specifically the rhythmic things, right? When we have those weird time changes, when we enter the weird time signatures, when we work outside of pretty much anything that's 4/4/3/4 or 6/8, and 4-bar phrases, and we do a lot of that in here. There's a ton of stuff in here that works with odd metric stuff. The difference between the big bands and the lesser known bands is consistency of execution. How does this sound when you put in your riffs, when you bring in the guitar work? How does it work with the flow of the song overall? And with your big bands, there's going to be a large amount of consistency in execution. The ideas are going to flow nicely, or as nicely as the harsh meters that you've picked can work together. And everything's just going to gel really well. And I think that's where this band falters a little bit. And it could be entirely intentional as well. They might not want to have that clear, pristine movement of ideas that Dream Theater would, for instance. In which case, if they're listening, completely ignore what I'm about to say here. But I think the ideas are solid, but moving into them is usually a bit rigid, rough, And occasionally being within the sections is a bit odd. It's almost as if you're pushing against the envelope too much. Uh, Basically sitting on that line between prog and experimental. And I think it's a very cool place to be. But I think many people like me are going to hear some of the introductory sounds here, immediately be brought into the mind of bands like Circus Maximus and Dream Theater and other contemporary prog metal bands. And then when you push past what they typically do, I think you're going to lose some of those people as well. And it really depends on why you're making the music here. Is it for yourself? Do you really like these ideas? Is being on that boundary between experimental and prog really where you want to be? Do you want to push further? Do you want to start making some avant-garde metal? I 100% support that. I will listen to all your stuff if you keep, doing some of these really odd, big, bold choices. But if you're trying to capture that same audience, if you want to be in the same sentence as Dream Theater, you got to smooth over some of the stuff. And that's why they're bold. It almost feels like you're biting off just a bit more than you can chew. There are some really cool ideas in here that I think just need a little bit more polish in order to feel more natural. I think that's the whole idea here. Is that the song feels a bit forced to be into these oddities as often as it is. Maybe even balancing it off. I know you have several of these sections that are more adjacent to heavy metal, right? We get those moments where you just move into 4/4. You got these sick groovy riffs, and I feel like that balance is nice and needed at times with how far you push it, but it never quite balances out perfectly. So, as usual, when it comes to this stuff, it's all subjective, right? It depends on what you're aiming for and your intents. Um, I think I've spoken about this entire metric thing both from a positive perspective and a neutral, slightly negative one as well. And like I said, if it's the kind of music you want to make, don't take any of the negativity I said to heart. Uh, but if it's not the kind of music you want to make, there's some room for shaping up, and that's why I think they're a bit on the newer side, because the shaping up is going to come from experience. Listen to Animals as Leader's first album. It's highly technical in a way that is a bit choppy at times, and it is impressive to listen to, but lacks a lot of the flow that you can find on their latest album. And that just comes from experience writing this type of music, knowing when you've pushed things too far, when you need to back it down, when you need to sand off a rough edge, and all that kind of stuff. It's the more music you make in this style, the better you'll get at it. And I would love to see these guys get better because I enjoyed this track. Here's an interesting thing. There at the end, the vocalist went for a forward placed belt, well, semi belt. For a split second, well, not a split, it was more like 16 bars, give or take. It really felt like Craig Owens was trying to do a heavy metal impression, and I really like that. I did not know I needed that in my life, but I really dug that. Um, yeah. Everybody in the band does a fantastic job, though. Playing all these ideas is ridiculous. Coming up with them is ridiculous, but then being able to remember all this stuff, I mean, it's the same jaw-dropping aspect I have with a lot of prog metal bands that play around with metric stuff primarily. Um, and I think Sad Serenity's got it. They got the chops for it. They just need to just keep at it. All right, keep improving. They're at like a 7, and I think they could easily be a 10. I'm gonna hit some lyrics, and we'll jump into our final track. A little bit of extra information for those who are enjoyed this. This is their debut album. It looks like 2023. It was released earlier this year. Yeah. As usual with all of these bands, I'm putting all their links, streaming platforms, merch, websites, all that stuff in the description box. If you're interested in checking out more from Sad Serenity, the links are down there. The lead singer here is the drummer. and this drumming is quite intense to be singing over. They also have another vocalist, Andrew Husky, who, at least in the personnel list, is listed as a featured artist. Their third person, Marcel, is the guitarist and bassist and keyboardist. I don't know if they're ready for live. They seem right now to be a studio band. I would love if anybody has a link to a live performance. I don't know how you're playing keyboards, bass, and guitar at the same time. You got to have some touring members, I think, to split that up. And I'd be really interested to see the drummer sing over top some of these ridiculous drum patterns. That's just going to blow my mind. But yeah, the guitarist, bassist, keyboardist also does vocals in a couple of sections as well. Interestingly, the second chorus is a different group of vocalists. The first chorus is the featured vocalist and the drummer, and the second chorus is the drummer and the guitarist. Yeah, it's very interesting. Our first verse is the drummer. We have a couple stanzas of the featured vocalist and the drummer. Then we have the guitarist and the drummer, and then just the drummer to finish the track out. These people are talented. This is just rebonkulous. I gotta make up a new word for this. The lyrics, though, are about, well, Dukkha, which is, I was reading, was this a Buddhist thing? Yeah, it's a fundamental tenet of Buddhism. It stands for suffering. It's the idea that suffering is a component of life. And so the song reflects on this. It mentions that suffering is all around. We have a character who is in suffering. The chorus states that time is a healer, or so they say. But if pain is so certain, why should we try to even evade? We strive through the ashes of our past. Why do the good things fail to last? So the things that we actually enjoy don't last too long. There's always going to be pain and negativity on the other side of that. And if that is the state of all beings, why do we even try to go for anything happy? Why do we try to get out of that state? Why not just make that the norm? And a lot of these stanzas seem to vaguely point towards a specific type of negativity that happened in a character's life, but it is done through a lot of vague lines. And we kind of end on that idea of why is pain the natural state? It says, a glimpse of starlight, walk the ruins of misreadings. If pain is a lesson, can't we agonize what we're needing now? You know, if pain's the lesson, why haven't we learned anything? I can kind of stand behind that. Yeah, I quite enjoyed that one. I don't know that there's too much that lines up between the music and the lyrics. The lyrics seem to be rather semi-straightforward, and the music is so difficult to get a grasp on. Emotionally, I wouldn't say that there's a lot of negativity or pain in the music either, but maybe I just forgot it, completely bewildered by all the metric stuff. Alright, we're going to wrap this up with a track from Symphress, which is like Symphony and Empress combined. Father Time, Part 1, The Father Naked, featuring Andrada Hofmeister. This track is 11 minutes. It's going to push me over my usual 1 hour block, and then we're going to talk about it. So I've been looking forward to this just based on the art, though, so I'm not going to stop the video now. Let's dive into this, see what's going on. What a slick little fermata there. Such an emotive opening already. Excited to see where they take us from here. Beautiful bass tone, keeping me intrigued overall. With a really harsh stop on that violin on the left. I love the dynamics in individual notes, not even just overall. A very quick gear shift. There's something about this riff, I'm not quite sure. It feels odd. I don't know if it's a timing thing or what. Yeah, this is it's going in a lot of directions.
contraption, imprisoned in myself.
What in the world? The guitar line is completely betraying the entire vibe here. It's an interesting combination, don't get me wrong, but it seems to be working in opposition. Interesting way to bookend this track. Oh, are we not? It was a fake out both auditorily and visually. Oh. Dang, there's still like 2 minutes left. This type of music right here, which this is the third time we've heard, I think is their bread and butter. I like the layering there with the whispers and the dual voices. Yeah, I'm quite torn on this one. Um, on one hand, just bravo. There's a lot of stuff going on in here. And, if this is everything you had in mind, well done. Um, but to me, how do I say this? It doesn't know what it wants to be. And that could be intentional. I get the gist that we're exploring a lot of time in a condensed way. I think we are talking about father time and that idea entirely, in which case the idea that we explore a lot of things disconnectedly is intentional. It's I would like to hear another track from Symphress to get an understanding if this is their normal way of composing or if it was an artistic decision for this specific song and theme. But regardless of my discontent for the fluidity of the song, I still have to give them praise for accomplishing everything that they did. This is a massive song that covers a lot of ground, and I think for the most part, everything works. That isn't to say that I think every section is a perfect masterpiece, but that overall, I don't think there's anything in here that stands out as something that would need to be drastically altered. At best, I think most of the stuff could just use a little bit more time put towards it, or maybe just a bit more expertise. Much like Sad Serenity that we just checked out, I think if they came back to this in 5 years' time after having written another album or two and bringing that experience to this specific song, I think they could achieve something that is still very much what this is, just better, more refined, I think is the word I'm going for. This is a very raw approach to it. And again, I don't think any of the music needs to change. There's some production things in here that I think are a bit off. There's a couple of decisions that I think just don't entirely work. Maybe tweaking an idea here and there, maybe removing an entire instrument from a section. But on the whole, I still think most of this works. It's just a very raw rendition of this concept. With that said, though, I mentioned that I think in 5 years' time they could come back in if they wanted to remaster it or even re record it. I think they would come to a vastly better version of it, primarily because I see a lot of potential in this group um, that experience is going to take to unlock, but that they have a phenomenal foundation already. This is not an easy track to write, even for a seasoned band. This is very ambitious, and I think that they did this up to the level that they did is impressive on its own. My one criticism I think that would help a lot of this is something that might go against the general theme here. Again, I don't know if the disconnectedness is a strong identity to this track, but I really could use a little bit of theme and variation on this. There's so many different sounds, not just atmospherically or emotionally, but timbre wise as well. Texture wise, we have different groupings of instruments. We have entirely different instruments in some sections. We change modes and keys wildly throughout this. Having some sort of idea that moves along with us, some motif that we can always lean on, would greatly help at tying a lot of this together rather than it feeling like channel surfing, which is how I feel right now. It honestly feels like 6 or 7 songs, or maybe more specifically, 6 or 7 ideas that they couldn't work out into full tracks, so they just smashed them all together. And I'm not saying that that's what they did, but that's what it feels like to me. I don't see any connection between much of anything going on here. It's just a bunch of disparate ideas smashed up against each other with lyrics put on top of it. And, there's very successful bands who do this exact thing. And to the Sky from Between the Buried and Me, I think is one of the first times I heard something along this lines of channel surfing in musical form. And that is a huge band, and that was a highly requested song. So, by no means am I saying what they did here was the wrong way to go about it. And if they have a thematic reason behind it, that's even better. At least I can appreciate it from that angle. But just as somebody who doesn't know much about them or their style, it's so close to being something that I want to listen to, but the disconnectedness hurts it in my eyes. And maybe that'll change once I hit the lyrics and understand what they're aiming for, and I might be able to appreciate it from an artistic direction. Um, but it was just a very difficult listen to for me, especially when so many sections I think worked in isolation. There's a lot of moments in here where I'm like, yeah, I'm digging what they're doing. I love this. The way that they use the extra instruments outside of the typical metal band sound, the violins, some of the brass. We had a throat singing in there at one time. I think we had a rain stick, which is very cool. I don't think I've listened to any metal with a rain stick in it before. Um, there's all sorts of sounds in here that I really appreciate them bringing to the table. There's very cool layering that we have there at the end. When it says, the father consumes and denies and destroys or whatever, there's like, I don't know, like 8 vocal layers there across 2 or 3 different vocalists, which really gives it that being from another plane feeling, as if they have multiple sets of vocal cords, all working in tandem. I mean, we had whispers, we had male vocals, female vocals, higher, lower. I mean, it just sounded phenomenal. That attention to detail is something I'm a huge fan of. The vocal layering and melodic counterpoint that we heard throughout most of this was gorgeous. I loved their jazzier side, their metalier side, their hard rock side, their classical inspirations here and there. There's so many things that I loved in the moment. The whole thing just doesn't come together for me as a whole, though. But if the purpose is intrigue, I think you got me. I'm going to be checking out more of y'all. I think it would be a huge disservice to write you off based on one track. Not that I do that with any band anyways. I'm always open to hear if a band changes, because very rarely does 1, 5, 10, even 20 songs showcase what a band does. Bands grow over time, Um, but I severely think that, at least in this case, uh, that this one track is barely showing me a portion of what y'all are up to. I'm going to hit some lyrics real quick, and then we're going to wrap this video up. For as long as the song is, and as dense as it is musically, it is so very sparse in the lyrical side. And a lot of that sparseness is drenched in vaguity. I don't think that's a word. It's very vaguely written, though. And some lines seem to be complete throwaway as far as providing information to the listener, and are there purely for some sort of sonic quality. A way to be playful with words and sounds entirely. And I suppose it's not necessarily, throwaway is a bit harsh for it, but it isn't there for a purpose of increasing the knowledge or understanding of the work, but simply to sound good in the moment, which isn't a bad thing. It's just something that I think is worth pointing out. I don't know what's going on here at all. And that's very possible because it's part of a larger concept. I want to read this short paragraph in their description. It says this is the song to close the first part of the entire concept, which is in fact only half of a larger piece. The second part of the song, outside the panopticon, opens the second part of the whole concept album. Thus, the song bearing the name Father Time acts as a gateway between the two parts of the album. Stylistically, The Father Naked is a complex piece which draws influences from a wide range of sources, from djent to marches and cabaret bar music. The lack of a chorus drives the song forward and suggests there is only one direction: forwards in the metaphorical war waged against the Father. So, yeah, the oddities and bouncing aroundness and lack of cohesion seems to be quite purposeful to the song. It's the identity of it. It's about battling time and time always taking you forward. The wide range of sounds is a built-in component to it as well, to lean into that, but it's also something that closes out the first half of this concept and is a lead into the last half of the concept, which I assume is an album. Maybe it's two albums, but I think that's why there was that hard stop there around minute 9.5 or 10. That gave us that outro that I felt was oddly placed. I thought the song was over, honestly, and we went to something completely different there. But that opens up and leads into the second half of this whole album, I assume. Yeah, it's like I said, it's still a bit rough around the edges, but it's a track that has me intrigued to check out more from Symphress. Um, and sometimes that's all you need. Just need that little bit of a hook to lure me in, and then you got me. Those are my thoughts on Elyne, Prospective, Sad Serenity, and Symphress. Let me know your thoughts to any of this down in the comments section. In the description box, usually I have my stuff, but as usual with this, I have all of their links in there instead. You can find their streaming platforms, their websites, social medias, merch, anything. Above the description box, if you could like, subscribe, and ring the bell. If you head on over to any of their pages, please like, subscribe, thumbs up, whatever metric it is. Show them some love from Critical Reactions. Really interesting stuff today. Tomorrow we'll be back with some special selections. And the day after that we'll do... What do we do on Thursdays? I don't know. Why am I blanking out on that? I don't know. We'll figure it out as we go, huh? Because... Oh no, today's Wednesday. Tomorrow we have special selections for Thursday. And then Friday we'll do new music. This week has already gotten out of hand for me. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.